order. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Jim Schrader.
Here.
James Carter.
Here.
Tom Turk.
Yep.
Mayor may not have the answer for
I have proof of posting. Will you all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 25th?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any corrections? Jim?
Yes.
James? Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. I have a motion to approve the payroll and disbursements.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Board President report. Well, I was hoping to be able to report that our football team started 3-0. Unfortunately, they had a little hiccup on Friday night and they started 2-1. I know that's the first time in quite a few years that they started 2-0. So they're playing their hearts out.
Okay, several things. The enrollment, again, just want to report to the board, and there's some open enrollment exceptions later in the agenda, but we are still continuing to be up about 20 to 25 students. But I'll tell you, it just gets deeper and deeper into every year. I think, Jim, you probably remember when students stopped registering probably mid-August, you know, and that's, people are registering, we have a new student tomorrow.
Right. I had just tonight, a community member wonder if the family had moved because she hadn't seen the family. They got off the bus today.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So it's still very fluid, and we'll keep you up to date. It does impact our budget a little bit. It is for the good, where the hold harmless from the state has helped us, but it just requires some extra planning. It also has impact on the levy too. So more students means more state aid in general, but everything always happens a year later too. So it's a time, again, at our finance meeting that's going to get rescheduled, or will be rescheduled, I'm hoping for next Monday. We'll have some of that information out and ready to go. So that has been good. Aaron and I met with, had a phone conference with Baird and just kind of going through some scenarios. I will mention the R-word referendum, starting to do some planning for that. Again, working through some scenarios, share the time a little bit, looking at 2- and 3-year options, and we'll get information out to people in a timely manner. The WASB survey, I've got a draft done, got it out to the committee. I don't know if the committee will want to meet again. Sandy, just let me know. We are going to be hiring one 3-hour position for the a la carte in the food service. It was a busy Friday. Aaron and I had a conversation with Tahar on the phone Friday in terms of expectations and service. In the summer, they had proposed having what I would call a supersize is probably not correct, but a meal for $3.50 that would be a reimbursable, that would be better food, a few more things, a couple other options. So they will be running that on the main line. It will be well advertised. Most of the time it will be based on like a taco bar, and so there can be some other fixings in that as an option. A la carte, again, once we get someone hired, that will look different than last year. There will not be service, a bar service in there like there was, or special meals. That was one of the challenges. That's some of the feedback we also got from people that are no longer working in the a la carte room. So, but also the USDA regulations have changed what they can offer too. I think primarily it's going to be beverages, some snacks, more or less, and we'll keep the food on the line. But we'll continue to monitor that. Again, roofing, we've had some decent progress. They got a lot of work done today. Hopefully the sheet metal and the masons will be, there. We have a meeting tomorrow at 10, and we'll talk about work to be completed. Busing software, and Dale and Rich just remind me I have the software. Now that we have cameras in all the buses, they've provided me a DVD that we can view. We should probably do some dry runs with Carrie, but just have her bring in a hard drive from one of the bus cameras and make sure it works on our computers. So that's going. I also, just kind of going back to the roof, but it's more of a segue to a couple other pieces of equipment. In that big rainstorm, the temporary roofs held, actually no leaks, which was a relief. Though I did get a phone call at 4 in the morning that we had high water. Our cell pump failed at the high school. So that got replaced, but a couple other projects have been creeping up because of the water. We had a couple windows leak. Most noticed, we had a couple replaced in the middle school this summer. And I noticed my office has been steaming up and everything. We're starting to have the wood fail on the windows, and they're just basically rotting out. I talked to the person that was replacing the windows, and he said, yes, it's basically, if it's not sealed or caulked well, water just gets in, and after time, it fails. So I think that's something that we're going to just need to have a conversation on that. We also had one leak in the boiler room, in addition to the sub pump failing. That was because of the drainage, but we'll be getting that addressed in the roofing. Asta is out in Washington, D.C., representing the state of Wisconsin high school principals. She will be lobbying full-time on Wednesday, so I've been getting some emails from her on things. They are three of the big things, and they do impact Wisconsin Heights, is technology infrastructure, E-rate, and then that's a reimbursement for technology, whether it's access to the internet, phones and cell phones, we can get some reimbursement on that. And then Title I, the question she had for me is, well, how far does our Title I dollar goes? And well, it pays for 66% of one teacher and 60% of another, no supplies. So those are things. She'll be at the Capitol all day on Wednesday. Also want to recognize and inform the board, Amy has been asked to represent, I don't know if it's Wisconsin, but asked to participate in the Smarter Balance Assessment review and revision. Smarter Balance will be something our students will be taking in the spring. I don't want to use the word replace WKCE. They are. WKCE will go on this year in social studies and science. The Smarter Balance will be for math, language arts, and reading in the spring. Amy's going to be part of a group of 7 to 10 people reviewing 3rd grade language arts. So she'll come back. Actually, I'll have her report back to you, as well as Asta's going to do a report on what she learned out in Washington. Other things coming towards the board, when I talked to some teachers, once they have had some time with the LearnPads and Exo tablets, just to do a presentation so the board can see what's going on with the new technology. Another thing, I know we've done a lot of site planning, site utilization. Kramer and they had asked to talk about 6 to 8 months ago. They are interested, and again, we're going to bring them forward not as a sales pitch, but this is what a building project looks like. And I think as most people know, they did build the middle school. They have been very busy up in Sauk this year. They built a new hospital. They built South Union at UW-Madison. They also rebuilt the Davies Center up at UW-Eau Claire. So, very familiar with educational settings, but they're interested in just having a half-an-hour conversation about this is what a project looks like, and so think of questions that you would have in terms of perspective and everything. Also, next board meeting, Rich had just informed me that both he and Asta and Pete Jepke, our head football coach, have sat down and talked about football, and they would like to have an informational presentation on what 8-man looks like. I know one of the conference commissioners, or the guy that coordinates 8-man, is willing to be available just to answer questions. I think at times, as it's been brought up, we don't know what it looks like because we know what 11-man is. so that will be an information discussion only thing also at the next board meeting. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody sign up?
No.
Okay. All right, district business personnel, discuss possible action to accept the resignation of Elizabeth Kepler, food service, with thanks to service since 2014. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions? Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Discuss possible action to hire Stephanie Perez, high school fall cheerleading coach, with a starting annual stipend of $900. It is prorated for mid-season start. Do you have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Fall, just football.
That is correct.
Good to have a program coming back. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Discuss possible action to hire Diane Rauke as 7th grade volleyball coach for the 14-15 season with an appointment of $1,500. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Discuss possible action to hire Scott Jones, high school English teacher, a one-year position for the 14-15 school year with a salary of $40,000. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Just want to
Discussion.
clarify, this is a position for our teacher that's on leave.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well.
Also, Sheriff Scott, it comes with several years of experience in K-12. Most recently has been working in MATC in DeVille College. It's a program, a bridge program for students that perhaps they want to go to MATC, but they don't have the prerequisite skills. And so he's been part of that program the last couple of years.
Cool.
He also, the one class that Kathy Haig was teaching that is articulated with MATC, he helped write the curriculum, so it's kind of nice, nice step in.
Cool. Discuss possible action to hire Andrea Bissauer, middle school interventionist, with a salary of $34,043. Have a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Questions? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Discuss possible action to approve Andy Cole as full co-curricular forensic director for the 14-15 school year with a salary of $1,500. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
Is this related to the?
Yes, usually Andy does it with Kathy, and this year Andy will take the lead.
Okay. Other questions? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Student issues, discuss possible action to approve high school band choir drama trip for spring break, March 29th through April 2nd to Memphis and New Orleans. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
And we do have Gina Adamino here on behalf of the music department, so I don't know if you'd like to share just kind of this is every other year, they do a big trip every other year.
Yes.
Traditionally, it's been to New York, but they discussed two options, and this is the option that these students are interested in. I don't know if you add anything else to that program.
This spring, Anella said she had 10 to 15 chaperones lined up. The final numbers are still being worked on this week. As far as fundraising, they'll be doing their usual bake sales and then probably the food line at the craft fair again. So students that don't have all of the money will have some opportunities to raise some money.
What are you seeing in Memphis?
Well, let's see. Dinner at B.B. King's Restaurant in
Page 17.
Louisville. It's 4 Beale Street. There's several paragraphs to what we want.
Graceland?
Those are the two big items, yeah. Graceland, Tourist Sun Studio.
Do you need extra chaperones?
We need someone for a coin flip for chaperones at a house at Mazo.
Okay. It isn't-
I don't know, that may be one or two houses, I'm not sure.
I'll spectate.
Yeah.
Is there any performance involved by
I don't believe so.
by the kids?
I'm sure they'll be taking a lot of musical things. So.
No better place to go than that.
One of my favorite towns, Memphis. Fascinating.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Thank you, yeah.
Keep in mind my offer, just in case you need another chaperone.
I'll make note.
Discuss possible action to approve the Alice methodology for active shooter scenarios.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
So again, the biggest part of this, what we would do if approved is then we're planning to do a training with our staff in December. That's pretty much where it's gonna be. But then we'd work to empower them into using this, giving them options. Also, I think it'll just help us K-12 wise have the same approach and training so that if indeed something happens, you know, we're prepared. And again, this is really about empowerment, as Dale shared in the presentation. It's a little bit different than what we used to do, but based on more or less the whole administrative team attending the training, you know, we found it to be a very good option. So it's something that a lot of neighboring schools are starting to do, so hopefully there'll be a cluster. Dane County Sheriff also had representation there, and so you know, it's gaining good foothold.
Okay.
If you do, is there more than just training? Is there a little quiz at the end, or?
Well, the pass or fail has been the scenarios, quite honestly. So talk about training, it's not only talking, and we haven't finalized it, but quite honestly, the biggest impact on why you counter and why you evacuate, and this, you know, again, sorry, the fly's bugging me. We may work with a couple community groups if possible, because, you know, the biggest impact you have is the difference of hiding and waiting for someone to come find you versus being empowered to evacuate.
Mm-hmm.
So the pass-fail, at the end of the 2-day training, it becomes pretty clear.
I see, well,
yeah.
just think of it, it's a mental issue to me, that somebody has to be strong enough to say.
Right. But you can also run. I mean, the counter again is the absolute last.
It's not freezing.
It's not freezing, but it's distractions. One of the activities we do is taking the balls that you see, you know, like the foam balls, and the shooter comes in and you throw it at him. And you know, these are trained, sometimes the people that were shooters in our exercises, and I don't know if we'll do that. I mean, that's to be discussed, and I think we need other people, because the impact of being the shooter is also, you gotta be a pretty strong person, but how people are disoriented and giving people opportunities to go. I think some of the videos probably are profound enough instead of going through some of the actual scenarios. I mean, at the first one where fish in the barrel, but there's some other things, you know, go to YouTube and it's all right there, and I think a couple of those, and the point is pretty clear. And if you'd like some of those, I think they should be in the documents I forwarded to you. There should be some links, but yeah. But in the end, it's about empowering staff. I mean, that's the fundamental thing. We believe you'll make the right decision. Eventually, we'll find you. If you leave the property, we'll find you, having the rally points, but, you know, you go from there. The other part for us will be working with the first responders so that they know where the rallies are. And, that may impact, or, I don't know, I'm not here to tell them how to do it, but they may take that into consideration when they do a response. What's their best option. So. But again, this is all straightforward. If someone, active shooter, is going down a hallway and someone's got a loudspeaker, it's active shooter in the 6th grade hallway. And then that empowers, the goal of that is to empower the rest of the building to go the other way.
Any other questions? All right. Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy? Kim? And I'll vote yes as well. Presentation on educator effectiveness, the role of the evaluator.
Yeah, sure, go out there and congratulations, principals, Principal Sears Hacker, Principal Turk, Superintendent Orchard, Business Manager, Carmen, Curriculum Director.
He wants to.
Who wants to be curriculum?
Master Chief.
Oh. Suppose you want sound on this too, huh?
All right, while he's getting that ready, Jim had asked for some examples of some SLOs last time when I presented some of the educator effectiveness stuff. So what I did is, there are 3 of them here, I believe. And it kind of goes through all the, I've deleted all the names and stuff, but it goes through all the different things that are required. What their main goal would be right here. Their student learning objective and everything that's included. And all of these that are included are the tiered SLOs. So it kind of shows what the teacher would be tracking and what we would be looking at throughout the year. And they would also be keeping documentation that is included in some of their narrative on the SLO. So if you look at the first one, we started this in January. So the baseline score of where they were was a 0, 1, 2, and there was 1 at a 4. Well, the goal by May was to be at a 6. So it was a pretty extensive goal to try to accomplish in a few months. And so they did this taking the Rigby test, and so they gave it throughout. But it's everything that she had done to get these scores to go up and progress monitoring that. Whereas before doing SLOs, you kind of did this in your head somewhat, but you didn't really have it on paper, and it's easy to miss kids. So she still had a couple kids that weren't growing halfway through, so she needed to look at those 3 and when am I going to find time for them? How am I going to see that they're growing and so forth. So her class, I thought it would be impossible to get as far as she did, but she got really, really far with them. And also, it says the status. Obviously, last year I was in a school that was highly ELL populated, but that all takes into play too, especially in kindergarten when you're looking at reading growth and so forth. And then at the end, did she meet her goal, yes or no, and so forth. And so you can see she didn't in some of them, but others she did. But it's how they do the whole process that we're also grading as well. So she had a really good process and explained it well, did a lot. You still saw a ton of growth with her kids from where they started. I mean, this is mid-year. I don't know where they were at the beginning of the year. It would be kind of scary. So, and some of them took huge leaps. So that's what you want to see. So she would be downgraded a little bit on the overall accomplishment of it, but the process and everything she would score very high in. Whereas before they just switched it to that. So before it was all based on the yes/no. And so you can see how much work she put into it, how much growth there was, but it wouldn't have counted. So that's kind of how they've changed it based on the pilots and everything. And this is something we have encouraged our staff to do, is to do the tiered, because it's making sure there's 100% growth in all your students. It's not just focusing on the small population of the bottom kids, like all the kids that were at a 0. It was everybody, so even your top kids were growing. and monitoring that throughout the year. And it probably will come down to that, so we just want to kind of have high standards and start there. And it really does, all the teachers really truly enjoy doing the tiered one and thought that it pushed them, because most teachers don't want to, not see that growth. They have that sense of failure when that happens. So it was nice to see. The second one was art class. And so the special classes are a little bit more difficult because they don't have testing and so forth that they can rely on for progress monitoring. So she had to create a pre-assessment with her kids, which if you turn the page on her chart, it's just much easier to read things when they put things on a chart like this. And so, again, labeled everything. The other thing that I've encouraged them to do is add attendance as well, because if there's a kiddo that's not growing, and he's missed 30 days of school, well, that's explaining some of it too as well. And so she did a primary, secondary, neutral color type thing for art, and she made her own assessment. So she had a pre-assessment and progress monitoring assessments throughout, and then a post-assessment to see where her kids were. And she said that this one really helped her to where she would be looking to teach it a little bit differently next year and so forth. So you're constantly evaluating what you do and things like that. And the last one was a Phi-Ed one, which again was a little bit more difficult. I was impressed that a lot of the special teachers really have actually here too been getting into it because it's harder, so they have to put a little bit more thought and creativity into it. And his was on some fitness tests with a grade, and he even put male and female and their exact age and stuff in their pre-test their semester, and it was something to do with push-ups or something, so that they were growing in that sense, and they seem to increase quite a bit actually as well. But again, there were some that never got there. But as long as they're growing, that's something that we want to see. And as this plays out over time, I think we'll be a lot. There will be a lot more effective teachers, and they'll just naturally do this more and more. So you can see all the work it takes just to do one SLO. They were going to have to do 2 SLOs in the beginning, but we just want to do one this year and do it well. So I have just kind of update you. I've offered people to come in after school or during the prep time or whatever, and I think I've talked to 3 or 4 already, and I have appointments with some, and that just started this last couple days. So they're excited about it, I think, and they're doing a good job. The ones that have talked about it have really put thought process into it, and it'll be exciting to see where they get by the end of the year. So any other questions with this, or does that make sense? Or yep.
As a teacher, do you ever run out of your SLO ideas or?
No, because in all honesty, I could have the same SLO every year. I just changed the data with my kids, so.
Oh, you've got different kids.
You have different kids every year, so your baseline would be, you would look at the kids in your room, and the baseline would be different, so you may adjust the growth and so forth. But.
Is it a good idea to change the SLOs just?
Depending on what it is.
I
Really.
suppose, depending on.
It really is. Like I said, most teachers K-8 are going to pick reading and math. I mean, those are the 2 main focuses.
Do you think that since those are the priorities established by the administrative team based on the mission statement and things, is that going to be the focus for the staff?
A majority of them, yes, including I've had science teacher, a health teacher, and some of them, they really are incorporating the reading into their subject levels as well, and they've come up with some pretty creative ways that were kind of similar, and they hadn't talked even, so of how they could improve the reading and that within their subject. Because again, they don't have tests either. Health and science and social studies don't have those state tests that are constantly being given in those areas, so they have to be more creative and create their own.
Do they have reading assessment?
We don't do Rigby here, no. So it's something that.
Is that just a commercial product?
It costs money and everything to get it, and so it just depends. Districts have different tests and so forth. Like we do PALS and that
Not all
math.
districts do maps, you know, that's actually a
MEP,
map,
Maps.
yeah.
And we did that at my last school too, but they also did Rigby, but at my last school as well, we had a huge, they're a focused school, so there's extra monies and stuff there for adding those extra things.
But it's also a good question, Jim, because what are, I don't know if you were asking this question, but when you were talking about it is, what are our data points? And just being clear with that, I think that's important. I think initially people said, and I hear it a lot, when they first started talking about educator effectiveness, it was about the score. And I've said it before where I can remember Dale and I being at a meeting with a couple other administrators and what's the score, and now they're talking about process and achievement, and so there's a couple grids, but they're all recognizing the process, and I think that's been a strong message from the DPI, really for the last 6 to 8 months, but really re-emphasize the last couple, because some of the rollouts where we at times would like to be seeing some stuff faster, they said, nope, we're gonna push it back a month, which makes, people in the district say, when are we gonna see this information that we've heard about? But the path that I see is that they're releasing things when they're ready. They're piloting stuff to check on it, but they're releasing things when they're prepared. Right?
And one of our things this year is to create common assessments throughout K-12. That will probably go into next year as well, but definitely at the secondary level, they're going to have to create some common assessments in order to make some of this stuff.
Dale, what are you hearing from your staff?
Yeah, well, Jim, DRA, Fontes and Pinelli's elementary level, we are, for the most part, really close to being finished with our common assessment. So particularly at Black Earth, and most of our common assessments in place. So, those are great data points for our teachers to use because all the kids are getting them and it matches our curriculum.
And that's been one of our questions. Where do we start? Well, let's start, with the reading.
Right.
Start at the very beginning and roll up.
How much of this information will be shared, and not that you want to hide it or anything, but you stand up and flash it in front of, interesting to learn what the SLOs are.
You mean for this district?
For this district,
Yeah,
yeah.
we can do that.
I
We would
don't
just
know,
take
is
the
that
names
common
off.
practice to just share?
I think it's
Yeah.
just telling people what we're about. That, in a sense, we're serious about supporting student growth.
And what I would do is ask for volunteers first, if there are people, and when I did my pilot, everybody volunteered, and they were willing to explain it and so forth, so, yeah, because then people could relate, and that fear was taken away. And there are some people really on top of it right now, they really are into it, I've talked to some 3 or 4 times, actually, so.
What would be a possible SLO for a 9th grade science teacher?
Well, you could do, it could be, we'll say like chemistry, it could be the periodic table, you could do something with that. Like the 8th grade science, I think, not quite, I don't know everybody quite yet, but somebody in the middle school science, it was more, it was the reading and informational text and things and being able to identify the main idea and supporting details and evidence and things like that. And also they were thinking they could do it by Lexile, so not everybody was getting the same article because it didn't matter, the difficulty of if a higher level reader would get a higher level article, Lexile, but because it was the skills they were looking at. And so they thought they could still challenge everybody, because obviously if I give them a medium level of reading, average level, the top kids are gonna get it, but we need to challenge them to go further. So they were really thinking on all that, and with informational text, it's very easy to do that. And, everything is kind of Lexile now, but it's not as hard.
And Lexile is another way of rating a book.
Right, the difficulty.
You can also pick something that's continually done, like in science, the scientific method might be something that you'd have different ways of assessing students' understanding of really what that is all about throughout the school year, or skills that they have to use, in labs, that you want them to get better and better at, so.
And that can be tiered too, because in different aspects of the scientific method,
Yep.
it could be as simple as problem, hypothesis, experiment, observations, conclusion, or a much more, in-depth.
And it really depends for the teacher to progress monitor that. How
Right.
often are they doing it? And they can't go too long, because then you've gone 2 months and they still don't know it, and, it's because you want them to really know it at the end.
But the other thing is just getting people to revisit and reflect.
And to understand the data, that's the other
Yeah.
thing that this kind of forces. We'll sit up here and introduce the data to everybody, and but they're gonna have to be analyzing it more, and then I think it has more value than, and emphasize it more with kids. Any other?
So how does this work, like, disciplinary wise? So a teacher does their SLO and they get no's in most of their categories, so what's the next step?
Well, we can,
I guess the first thing is right now, the district has to make a decision, are they using this data for that purpose? Right now, this is for growth, so this would be separate. Right now, as a district, as far as we're operating, this is for growth purposes.
But if they're not growing, like you said,
Yeah.
they'll be meeting with administrators throughout the year, there's midpoints and everything. So if I see that this just isn't happening, we're gonna have to tweak it or find something different, or it's just not working, not to make them, but this first year DPI says it's a whole learning experience. But if you continually have somebody like next year that would be the same way, well then that's a red flag, and something's not happening somewhere. And there'll probably have to be put on a plan and so forth. And it'll show up also, I would imagine, in their evaluations and so forth, so.
We're just gonna have to break down, why,
Right.
so what was that teaching process? Why did they achieve where they wanted to achieve, and you just gotta break down the process
And mentor
answer the
them
question
that.
why, and then.
But if the staff wants to challenge themselves and they write an aggressive SLO, there's also an opportunity to do some revisions throughout the year.
Like the
Where
first
the-
one I showed you, I was like, oh my, this is, but.
Good for you, go for
Yeah.
it. What will it look
You
like
don't want
in
to
6
tell them
months?
no, but, and in the end, she did a good job.
Even though it didn't quite reach the 80%.
Right.
But
I think the other part of it is the artifacts. I think that's gonna be another big driver, and that's where you'll see the detail. And that's where, as people look at things, they'll say, okay, progressing, question, progressing or not progressing, what's the evidence? Or they like to say, I don't think you'll hear it tonight, preponderance of evidence. It's not just, oh, that didn't go well. Okay, recognize, how do you support, revisit, and then
Like,
go for it.
Like, for instance, it'll show up, like, whether I kept those 3 kids that weren't growing, maybe I kept them in for recess. So you're documenting all those things. So, I know that they have pretty much tried everything. And if it's a kindergarten reading class with that many ELL students, how many of, 6 is being where you want them to be. So, how often does that happen in reality anyway, where everybody's at grade level and so forth? So, you have to take all that into account as well. Okay.
Sure. Did I take your notes? Oh. So again, what you're looking at right here is the training module for all the administrators. And actually, why don't you just scroll down? Oh, please.
No, I was gonna do that, but we can do that first.
Yeah. So if you look at it, we'll gonna go back to it. So this is the module in terms of training. Everything, now you can click through it, and of course, it's like reading a book. Some people, if 5 people read the book, and then there's 5 different stories, you realize different effort, different engagement, etc. So basically, on the right side is everything in terms of what the module is for, and then it gives an opportunity, because you can also go back and train accordingly if you have deficiencies, and that's later on, but this is what everybody has to go through first before they start. And it's kind of a building, you know, it just steps up, steps up, steps up. While you're taking it, you also see the repetition. Okay, I didn't do well here, but then a section later, you're like, oh, okay, you start seeing patterns, and you get some fundamental understanding.
That's the time it takes to go through each of those at least, if you do it the way you're supposed to do
Right.
it.
So roughly 26, probably about 25 to 40 hours just up front before you're starting to watch the videos. And then the fundamental part, which is where Amy was going, was the bias concept, minimizing bias. Right?
So now you're-
Oh, no, just,
we're good.
okay. And there is a handout, but there's some bias activities.
This handout I just copied and pasted so you have it in front of you. So it goes through what bias is, what interpretation is, and what evidence is. And so a lot of times these things can be confusing to people, and they'll misread it or misjudge things. And so I think when we were going, at least when I was going through it, it made me realize, change my way of thinking sometimes on certain things, not everything. But I truly believe when you get through the bias, the evidence, and those things, that we're all on the same page for the most part. Because it's so ingrained in you that you just know, and you're a lot less judgmental, or there's just no bias in there, because you know the right way to evaluate that. So whether it's Dale or Vivian or Mark or myself, I really feel we would probably evaluate that teacher very similarly. I don't think we'd be that too far off when you're through it. And so, I have to remember, is there all, what parts do you want to go through?
Why don't we just give a snapshot of some of the training on one of them?
Okay, so, like, it starts with the overview, which goes through what this module is going to be about. And then it talks about minimizing bias, like what are the typical stereotypes and judgments that we make, whether it's race, gender, and just things in general, like the class is only well-managed if everybody's sitting in their seat and quiet, those type of things. And some of us have that in our head, that they're not learning unless they're quiet. And so it goes through all those different things and how they're perceived, and how we typically do put a lot of bias in that, depending on our own philosophy of education and experiences. So you get rid of all that by the time you're done with this. And then it will go through the module and the objectives and everything. And just more, with location and different levels and ethnicity and those type of things. And generalizations that we make. And they'll give you examples, your reaction to seeing a person with a dog walking quickly toward you. What are you going to do? If a dog is walking quickly toward me, I'd probably freak out a little bit, especially if it was a big dog, because I'm scared of big dogs. If it was a little dog, I'd probably pick it up. But, you don't know what they're going to do, but what's your, and some of you may like a big dog, so you're like, so it really makes you think of how you react and judge things and that sort of thing. It goes through that application and why we do those things in our personal preferences, blind spots, whether you're conscious of it or not, whether you really can see it or not. So you may be blind to certain things, and it kind of really makes you think through all that. And then giving evidence of it, and then it goes into evidence versus opinion. When you're in the classroom, it gives a description of classroom observer records an event with no interpretation, and an opinion is that an observer interprets an event based on own beliefs and about their teaching.
So the difference even from an observation of, it was a good class today because the students worked well together. That's not evidence, there's some interpretation going on. It's some introduction of bias.
When no learning could have taken place, today, but that's what our opinion was. And then it just goes through more more scenarios like
We have a
that.
summary activity on interpretation and
Yes.
Beautiful blue.
We actually went-
Were you gonna do this one, or were you gonna do that one in that other section?
I think the other section.
Okay. So,
I'll just flip to another section quick.
but that was kind
Back to
of,
training.
that part was kind of the fundamental. What do you do, or, you know, how do you record observations?
So, this is putting it all together. This is.
dude, it's in that, putting it, keep going. Oh, that, you can do
That one?
interpret, is that the one?
There's an activity, it's hard because everything, there's so much in here.
Go to putting it all together, Amy. Right there. Okay, evidence, interpretation, and bias. You see that in the top left?
Okay, so what happens when you go through all of that and you've learned it, you've really done a lot of repetition and a lot of scenarios and so forth, then it has you identify each statement below and if it's evidence, interpretation, or bias. And this part is on the test. And you may think it's easy sometimes, even after going through that, but you really have to think sometimes and take it apart. So the teacher says it's fun to find the patterns for factoring polynomials. So is that evidence, is it interpretation, or is it bias? So you can see, am I interpreting that? Is it bias? So you really have to, it really starts to separate it once you've gone through all the training. And then I would, just put whatever for each of these. I'll just kind of put things in here and then hit return. So, do I have to answer all?
Do I answer all?
Anything else?
This
Or you can have
exists,
them do it.
questions like this
It's-
are a major part of both of the tests.
And how long did you say this test take?
Both can take up to 6 hours apiece. We know one person that's taken 5 hours and 59 minutes.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Just for one of the sections.
Okay.
The other one was a good solid, just 5 hours.
That was
So,
I think it and rethink it and rethink it and think it and.
So then what you do, and I just put whatever in here, it'll go back through and tell you why. So by the time you go through everything, I mean, you really seriously know the
So
difference between them.
the first one is evidence because the teacher said it. It's not what the teacher said, it's the
The fact
teacher
that they
said it.
wrote down, this
It
is what
happened.
the teacher said. It's a fact that the
Yeah,
teacher said.
the next one is biased because that's not how I would do it.
I got one right.
Amy was correct on one,
Hey, that was good.
cares about the students, again.
Interpretation.
Yeah.
So classroom management is considered evidence. It said they came in and as received.
Well, no, the statement's evidence.
Okay.
That's just what the principal
Evidence
wrote
is,
down.
if it's a fact, something you can see or hear, then that's evidence. So whether it's good evidence or bad evidence, like a positive thing or a negative thing is immaterial in this part. It's just, are you writing down the facts as they are?
And then there's a rubric for, this is
Yeah.
the second and third domain. And then there's, if you're exemplary, this is what it looks like. If you're, a great teacher, good teacher, and let's get better. And, I think the biggest thing when we talk about 4, 3, 2, and 1, the teachers live in 2 and 3. You visit 4, and hopefully we can get you out of one if you're there. But, understanding that all of us have strengths and weaknesses. So there are going to be areas of, hey, let's get better. And what we wanted to do was show you one video of
I think what I'll do is just kind of explain
the video instead.
like, this is every module, so you can see why it takes a couple hours to get through it. And, it goes through the basic introduction of everything. And then it gets into the levels. So a level 3 teacher, it tells you what a level 3 teacher looks like in engaging students in learning. So you look for these key words, designed to challenge student thinking, active intellectual engagement by most students, and clearly defined structure. And so once you've documented your things, you go back, and the hardest part is 2 and 3, to tell the difference between a 2 and 3 sometimes. 1 are easy, 4 are fairly easy because they're just above
And
and
4 is
beyond.
the biggest clue to 4 is student-initiated learning. If the students are taking, control of the classroom, or they're initiating things.
Yeah.
Yep.
The students drive. And then they'll give you a video. So you go in and you have different videos that you watch for each of them, and they may be 3, 4, 5 minutes, and so forth. And then they'll tell you what their thoughts are on it after you have gone through it. So you really get to check where I'm at with this. And then, it'll go in and tell you what.
Is there a way just to
is.
run one and then
Yeah.
just click on it and then just kind of show the feedback?
Yeah. And so, again, it's the keywords for a level 2, and so forth. And a level 4, you can see it's students engaged, students inquiry, everything student, 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 student. And so video. And then there's just these.
And even in the module it's telling, you can see some of these teachers that are 4 sometimes, and then sometimes there are 2.
Right.
Because it was, too procedural, just kind of the proverbial, going through the motions.
No volume.
So they're small and kind of hard to watch sometimes.
You can make that full screen.
Athletic. How they approached all of this are athletic. Are very athletic. All of the sort of implies, right? Yes, sir.
What they're trying to do is the CIA didn't exactly want to be integrated. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it really hard so that way a lot of them will fail. And they came down to that one dude who turns out that he passed on the test because they really didn't want him to.
Well, they did want one. They did want one because they were looking for a token. We discussed what a token is, right? That's why the only black character on South Park is called Token. Because, right? Because the idea is that if you have a black person, then you're not racist or you're not segregated. So, let's deal with that part of it. So he gets, girls, he makes it all the way through. He's the only one that makes it all the way through. And they make him, where is it? The Top Secret Reproduction Center Section Chief. The top.
Oh, it's kind of short or something.
But, so you can see how this teacher isn't a 4 because it's not as student-led. I mean, they're having a discussion and students are participating and so forth, but in a 4, it would be more of the students directing all of that and answering more of the questions, whereas the teacher is doing more of it. And so that's just an example of all the stuff we have to do to go through it. So it's pretty pretty extensive, and I've been trained in CISA 6, and this is far better, in my opinion, than CISA 6, because they don't go through all this. You don't really know the difference between bias and all that at the end of that training. The only reason I did was because I went through this first thing, so. But is there anything else?
No, we wanted to show you kind of what the training was, kind of reinforce the message of growth and clear expectations. And I think that's the key, and what we'll be doing with our teacher coaches as we bring them on is, again, they're a group of staff. We've got 5 teachers, so the administrators, Rich is going through this right now, going to his first, I know he's been doing independent training, but going up to CISA 5 for first of 3 days of training this week, and then a couple days next week. But at the end of day 2, he's going to be ready to go. But we also have 5 other teachers that are trained in this, and a couple that have opportunities if they'd like to. But we'll get back to staff. How are they, what are they hearing? How do we support staff? And again, we're just going to work together on this. I think it's, again, having a conversation about what does good teaching look like, and putting the support in place to make it happen.
And we have our final step training with them on their first in-service day, so we'll have a 3-hour training on this.
So between educator effectiveness and SLO training, that's for the in-services this year. And, giving staff some work time and,
And also vital time. We'll have hours.
Or what Amy's doing too. Hey, I need some help. That's, again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to have a C&I director and Amy new coming on board, but
What's nice about it is that I'm a little bit freer because I don't have kids and stuff to be responsible for, so they can come to me, whereas the principals, at times are busy and doing this and that, so it's been nice that way for them, I think, too.
If you'd like to go through the training,
You'd like to write an SLO.
Yeah, it's been a while since hitting that magic button to see what you get. So, and a couple of administrators even had their computers freeze up and support comes through and it's done. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, does anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay. So a motion to accept the 2 Packer tickets as a donation from First Student valued at $144. Thank you. And these are traditionally...
been raffling them at games. I know Rich and I have spoke briefly, but we'll have a conversation or an email again. Get that rolling.
Ready to get on the same page. I'm learning this part of it. Mark was giving me some information, so we're just going to sit down and go a little more in depth and what's involved in the whole process to make sure we...
Maybe I should have gotten a December ticket, but no, this is October 19th. So.
All right. We'll get them out there.
Awesome. All right. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Sandy? Kim?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. You will see board goal setting on the bottom there, number 4. I would like to postpone that and put it on the next board meeting because we have 2 out of 7 board members missing, and I would like for everybody to take place or speak their mind or whatever. Yeah. So if the rest of the board doesn't mind, I will have that put on the next agenda. Okay. Finance, discuss possible action on open enrollment exemptions.
So in summary, we've got 8 in front of you. 5 students are changing their current open enrollment district. And then we have 3 students that are requested, they're new to the district, and then, but would like to attend their former district.
And the 5 did not attend before, they're just changing.
Correct, they're changing.
Where they're like from
Yeah.
Mount Horeb to Middleton
Madison
or
or
Madison,
virtual.
whatever.
You know, sometimes it happens where, yeah, it goes from a virtual to just a traditional educational setting, or vice versa.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
James?
Yeah.
Sandy? Kim?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Future meetings, policy, well, we'll have budget and finance on the 15th. Policy before the next board meeting. Do we need any others at this time? Nothing right now?
Are you having finance at 5? That's what
5 o'clock.
That's what you told me, so.
Good with you? Jim? All right. The other important dates, the 50-year celebration on the 26th and 27th of September, and the annual meeting on October 20th at 7 p.m. in this very room.
83 people pre-registered for the 50th.
Is it up to 83?
Yep.
Nice.
So we're making plans.
Awesome. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you all.